This really made me angry. You know, when someone says something that's so outrageous, you don't even know what to answer. You're just sitting there like, this took me a minute. So Linda Greenfield, who's the United States ambassador to the United Nations, do you know what she said? She accused Russia of making the food instability in Yemen and elsewhere even worse by invading Ukraine. She called it another ripple effect of an unprovoked, unjust, unconscionable war. Hold on a second. So let me get this straight. The United States has been selling Saudi Arabia hundreds of billions of dollars worth of weapons. Under Obama, under Trump, they've been bombing Yemen for 7 years with US weapons and British weapons and German weapons. And they've been purposely targeting fishermen, purposely destroying the infrastructure in Yemen. And now it's Russia's fault? I'm so angry. This is so outrageous. This is like somebody telling you 2 + 2 is 5. What? What on earth are you talking about? This really infuriates me. Even Ilhan Omar, she said, Yemen's devastating humanitarian crisis isn't because of Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. It's because of the Saudi-led coalition's brutal war and blockade that is starving millions of Yemenis, which the US still supports. Let's not put the blame where it doesn't belong. So again, she encapsulated the entire issue perfectly. And pay attention, she doesn't just say the war, she says the blockade. Now, if we're being honest with each other, a naval blockade, an embargo, sanctions, it is war. It's economic warfare. Same thing. And this is something that I released a report on just a few weeks ago, right? I partnered up with Amir Al-Tiba, who's a Yemeni economist, Oxford graduate. He worked at the World Bank. And we published the figures of how the blockade on Yemen is ruining everything, right? So right now, people in the United States, they pay like $4 a gallon, which they're already mad about, $5 a gallon in some places. Do you know how much Yemenis are paying? $9.50 a gallon at the pump. And again, this isn't just about, I can't fill up my gas tank. You don't understand, when there's no fuel coming into a country, everything is screwed up. Everything from the agriculture industry, the services sector, everything becomes more expensive. The electricity becomes more expensive, cooking gas, food. And with Yemen, they're purposely targeting fuel ships so that no fuel comes in, and therefore food becomes more expensive. So this idea that this is Russia's fault is absurd. This is ridiculous. Now, again, let's be very clear. Yemen gets 40% of its wheat from Russia and Ukraine together. So obviously the war is making that worse. No question. But you've been stabbing the Yemenis in the back for 7 years, and now you finally found some excuse to blame everything on Russia. This is what's so disgusting, because this would already be ignorant. This statement right here would already be ignorant if anybody said this. But for the United States to say that, right, which has literally made hundreds of billions of dollars in profits from murdering people in Yemen, this is really disgusting. This is really adding insult to injury. And I'm just going to show you, just as an example, this is from The Guardian in 2017, yeah. So the headline reads, "Bombed into famine, how Saudi air campaign targets Yemen's food supplies." And you can see here how they say, since Saudi Arabia launched its military intervention in Yemen in March 2015, more than 10,000 civilians have died. Keep in mind, this article's from 2017. We're in 2022. This figure is way worse. We're talking about hundreds of thousands at this point. They continue, more than 250 fishing boats have been damaged or destroyed, and 152 fishermen have been killed by coalition warships and helicopters in the Red Sea. Now, when they say coalition, they're talking about the Saudi-led coalition, right? Because this is a coalition that includes the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and a few other countries. And the weapons that this coalition the weapons that are being given to this coalition are coming from the United States and Britain and France and Australia and Germany and Canada. And so that's what they mean when they talk about coalition. And just to go back to my report, which I published a few weeks ago, this investigative piece, you can see here how every year there are fewer and fewer fuel ships coming into Hodeida port. Hodeida port is the biggest port in Yemen, and it's the closest port to where most people in Yemen live, right? So you can see you had 80 ships in 2019. The next year, 63. Last year, 5 ships. And this year, 1 ship. Now, again, just to be clear, this is until the end of March, because the day after I published this report, they announced a ceasefire between Yemen and the coalition. And as part of the ceasefire, they allowed 2 fuel ships to go to Hodeida. And I published the documents of one of those ships right here. This is the Splendor Sapphire, and I published how it had been cleared by the United Nations to go to Yemen, but then the Saudis intercepted it. The Saudi coalition intercepted it, and they keep it here indefinitely. And so when you keep a ship, you stop a ship from offloading its cargo, whether it's chicken feed or fuel, doesn't matter. Under some contracts, you have to pay fines because you're basically, you're borrowing this ship to ship cargo, and if you don't get rid of the cargo, you're preventing the owner of the ship from making money with other exploits, right? So these are called demurrage fines. And so every single day where these ships are being held, these demurrage fines are going up and up and up and up. And then once the fuel finally gets into Yemen, which can be after 6 months on average, this cost is pushed onto consumers, onto Yemenis when they're paying for gas at the pump, or paying for electricity, paying for food. Everything is more expensive now. Everything is screwed as a result. And so, the fact that they released these ships, you know what that is? That's vindicating, because it proves that this report that me and Amir published is correct. There is a fuel blockade. There is a siege on Yemen, and that siege is intentional and it's political. It has no purpose but to screw Yemenis, because when they want to, they just let the ships go. It's nothing to do with security, whatever garbage they say. Again, these ships have UN clearance. Saudi Arabia, no country has any right to stop them. They have permission from the UN. I showed you the documents. And so my point, just going back to this outrageous claim that, Russia is making the situation in Yemen worse. Get the hell out of here. This is obscene. This is obscene. I'm struggling to find an analogy, but it really infuriated me to read this because it's so insulting. It really encapsulates, it really embodies the term adding insult to injury. And so I don't expect anything less from a U.S. ambassador to the UN. Nikki Haley, who was her predecessor, wasn't much better under Trump. But just keep this in mind, how the United States will, attack countries or basically fuel the conflict and then try to blame somebody else. I mean, we've seen, for example, for example, with Syria, just pay attention. Every time you hear a report on CNN or on the BBC where they talk about how there are going to be elections in Venezuela or in Syria, they always tell you that the economic situation is very bad. But they don't tell you why it's bad. They make it sound like, Maduro, who's the president of Venezuela, he just woke up one day and he wanted to destroy the entire economy to make people suffer, right? And the same thing in Syria. They don't tell you that, yes, the economic situation is very bad in Syria, but it's bad because of sanctions. It's bad in Venezuela, and it's bad because of sanctions. They leave that part out because who's doing the sanctions? It's the United States. It's the European Union, right? And so they lie by omission. They leave this crucial piece of information out to make it sound like, well, this is all of the government's fault over there. And this is kind of the same thing. It's shifting the blame, right? So they are the attackers, the aggressors, the ones killing civilians, starving civilians, and then they shift the blame onto someone else, whether it's the local government there in the case of Syria, Venezuela, or in this case, Russia, because everything is Russia's fault, including higher food prices and as Biden's administration is now calling it, Putin's price hike. What a joke. They really think people are stupid. They really take you for a fool. They think you forgot that a few months ago, before this war ever even happened, that gas prices were already high. Let's just leave out all of that wild, the outrageous printing of money. Let's leave out all the price gouging. No, it's Putin's price hike. It's so it's really egregious, and they really take people for fools.